All right, so let's get started, yeah? Can someone be in charge of handing this out to anyone new who comes in so that I'm not, going around here? Oh, thank you.
Thanks for doing that, Lee.
Yeah, thank you.
Don't worry, they compensate for it. Oh, sure.
Yeah. So today we're gonna be going back through the Ramya, which is going to be, let's just quickly bring that down a little bit so it's clearly seen a little bit up there, which is essentially, we're going to talk a moment about it a little bit more. We're going to go back into that sugya in Masechta Be'ah that we were dealing with, and we will take a look at that. We'll work on it. Next week there will not be shir because of the Malacha Malka Fibringen, and I encourage everyone to be there because it's going to be great. Rabbi Goldberg is going to Fibringen, so how often do you get to hear of Rabbi Goldberg Fibringen? That's going to be Okay, I'm just mentioning it. And let's move this out of the way. Yeah. Okay. So last week we talked about the a couple different klalim that are back in after Kushya, taking up a smaller amount of the give and take of the Talmud. One of the klalim we discussed was called Ramya, which means to throw. Sus berechva Rama v'yam. We say it every morning. Hashem hurled the horses and riders from Pharaoh's army into the Sea of Reeds, the Yam Suf. As we hear, we say it every single day. And it's the same lashon. Ramya means to hurl, to throw. So we're actually going to be throwing two things against each other. Maybe I wasn't 100% clear. It came out to me that I wasn't 100% clear on some of those details last week. So I'm going to briefly mention something that we learned before regarding the different types of Tanaic teachings. If you remember back originally when we started, I spoke about Mishnah, Beraisa, and Tosefta. There's three sections of Mishnah, Beraisa, and Tosefta. A Mishnah is the strongest. It's like established fact. Logically speaking, it's like the way that we now we can't just say something that's not in the Shulchan Aruch. The Shulchan Aruch and its commentators are basically established fact. You can't just argue on it for no reason. So too, by the time of the Gemara, the Mishnah was established fact. You couldn't argue on it. It was like, the scientists say, like an accepted theory that nobody can really argue on because it's so well proven that that was the Mishnah. After the Mishnah came Tosefta. Tosefta was written down right after the Mishnah. It's very, very, very well edited, very clear, very accurate, and accuracy is the key. Because the longer these Toseftas and Beraisas are both called Beraisas. Beraisa means outside, means it was outside of the Mishnah. It's by the same people, but it was left out from the Mishnah. Beraisas were learned Bal Peh through memory, by heart, for the amount of time until they were written down. Some Beraisas, the earliest Beraisas to be written down were the Toseftas. And the later Beraisas written down, Toseftas are very strong. Some Toseftas can even challenge a Mishnah, and we saw that earlier. And some Beraisas, which went on and on 150 years, 200 years later before they were written down, developed problems with them. And some of them are mistakes, even that someone made a mistake in putting it together, and things didn't work very well. Because of that, so then they get rejected in the Beis Medrash. The reason why I'm examining this for a moment is because when we're talking about a ramya, about throwing two things against each other, something has, in order for one thing to break and the other thing not to break, one has to be stronger. So a Tosefta, a Mishnah and a Baraisa, a Mishnah and a Mishnah get thrown against each other, usually nothing's going to break. Unless you have a really, really, really strong argument, usually nothing's going to break. Everything's going to stay intact, and you're just going to have a tremendous release of energy, and that, I'm using just scientific humor here, like a particle collision. You have the particle collision, two things which are neither of them is going to break, theoretically, but both of them, when they collide, they're going to release a tremendous amount of energy. So too in the case of throwing two Mishnayos against each other, neither of them is per se going to break, but they're going to, the reaction that comes out from it is going to be, a tremendous reaction, and that reaction is going to help us reveal the truth. Because the whole point of why we're throwing these things against each other is in order to help us get down to what the halacha is, to figure out which one is stronger and which one is going to end up being the final halacha. So you'll see this Lashon Ramya over by Psukim. Sometimes you'll see Tanaim or Amirayim throw Psukim one against the other, which is when it looks like one verse and another verse are contradicting each other. Then actually a great example in today's Torah portion, that's in today's parsha, it said, Ksav l'cha es hadavarim ha'eleh, write down these things, and then it says, Ki al pi hadavarim ha'eleh, karti bris itach, and it says, by the mouth of these davarim. So it says, one pasuk says, write it down, one pasuk says, say these devarim bal peh. So actually, in Masechta Gitin, we do slam these two psukim right against each other, and we ask what does it mean? So then the Rabbanan answer, Ksav l'cha es devarim ha'ele goes on Torah shebeksav, and it says that Torah shebeksav, what is written down is not allowed to be said bal peh. Generally, not allowed to be said bal peh. And what is to be taught bal peh, and what is written down, and what is said bal peh is not allowed to be written down. So you may ask, how are we able to write down the Gemara and the Mishnah, and how are we able to get to the Shulchan Aruch? How are we able to write down Aimarim and Sichas and like? So that, if you want to talk to me after class, it's a nice introduction in Sefer Halichas Olam, which also deals with Klalim, like what we're dealing with here. And Sefer Halichas Olam goes in in detail and explains how we got to the ability to write it down, even though it was forbidden to write down Torah Shebal Peh, the oral tradition. Originally, even though it was forbidden, so somehow we got to be able to write it down, and it explains very clearly over there how we got to that point. So Psukim, there's your example. Psukim, two Psukim running one against the other, two Mishnayos running against the other, which is what in the Gemara that we're going to be examining today, that we began examining last week. It's basically Mishnayos going one against the other. A Mishnah can also be thrown against a Baraisa or Tosefta. A Tosefta and a Mishnah can go up against each other and not necessarily anything is going to break. A Baraisa, a less accurate Baraisa, against the Mishnah, the Baraisa is going to have a problem with it. We're going to say that the Baraisa is not a kasha in the Mishnah, but the Mishnah is a kasha in the Baraisa. The Baraisa does not pose any difficulties on our Mishnah, but the Mishnah can pose difficulties on the Baraisa. As a result, so then we understand, even though they are contradictory, they're not necessarily the same strength. They're approximately the same strength, but not necessarily exactly the same. A Baraisa and another Baraisa within the less reliable sections of Torah in terms of editing. It could be a Masechta Seifrim, could be a Baraisa that's just brought in the Gemara that doesn't have the source. parts of Tosefta that are not really Tosefta. Those Beraisas, tonight teachings, the Beraisas that are brought, it may be that one of them is thrown against the other one and they both break. and we can reject both of them. And that happens. It happens that we end up saying that this one we can't learn from for this reason, this one we can't learn from this reason, and you can't throw them against each other because they're too fragile to be thrown against each other. If you see it in Psukim, it could be Rami Kosev, which would be just Reish Mem Yud, usually is how you're going to see it. But usually when you see it inside the Gemara, when you see it with the using with a Beraisa or with a Mishnah, then you're going to see it Urminhu, like this, either with a Yud at the end or with a Vav at the end. And when you see it inside, it's like a little red flag should go up. This is what you're seeing when you see it. It's a contradiction, and there are two things being thrown one against the other. So what does it look like? I'm sure you want to know. If they fly one against the other, it looks like this. Got it? Okay. Never mind. Yeah.
The Big Bang?
Huh?
What?
No, it's from the particle collider. It's a good little, yeah. Okay. But that's essentially it. You end up releasing a tremendous amount of energy in terms of reaching the truth. You come a lot closer just from slamming these two things into each other. Like, for instance, that drasha and Gitin that threw the two psukim in our parsha, this week's parsha, to get against each other, that actually came to derive out for us two of the 613 commandments, which actually are, it's not according to all opinions that necessarily these are, but according to some people who are enumerating commandments, these two, you're not allowed to recite Chumash Baal Peh, and you're not allowed to write down Torah Baal Peh. Those two things are they're two of the 613 mitzvahs, and so we're learning it out from slamming two psukim against each other. So let's just hold on. This is a little bit. Okay, there we go. All right. So I think where we left off here, we left off over here. We said, remember last week we were dealing with a machlokes, argument between Beis Shammai, the Academy of Shammai, and Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai is saying, according to what's the machlokes about? Machlokes is about how far of a bulldozer is Simchas Yom Tov. How easily can Simchas Yom Tov knock down other stringencies? For instance, how easily can Simchas Yom Tov cause us to demand that we should be lenient in minhagim or in muktzah, like gezeres d'Rabbanan, which Simchas Yom Tov, which is a mitzvah midiraisa, might be pushing off sometimes, or bending or pushing off lower level prohibitions, like a prohibition of the Rabbanan. It might occasionally push at it, and I'm not poskening from the Gemara. There's very, very strict, there's different details on exactly how that happens. And you should be mi'ayin in the Shulchan Aruch if you like to take a place exactly how that works. I can't tell you all on one foot, but there's a lot of details on when it does, when it doesn't. Simchas Yom Tov v'samachta b'chagecha v'yisach sameach is a mitzvah midiraisa. It's 100% one of the 613 mitzvahs is Simchas Yom Tov. It's a positive commandment, and it's basically like a big bulldozer, and it can knock a lot of things down. So when we say, how far does Simchas Yom Tov go, we're talking about a major inyan of a mitzvah midaraisa, a mitzvah from the Torah that's pushing things off. So there are a lot of Mishnayos in the first chapter of Be'ah that are discussing this idea. And if you remember, in the first Mishnah, we discussed last week, Beis Hillel, seemingly, according to what we quoted and what's quoted inside, Beis Hillel said, the Mishnah says, if a person wants to shecht an animal, a wild animal, or a kosher wild animal, a chaya, or an oif, a bird, on Yom Tov, Beis Shammai says that he can dig, you have to cover the blood. So to cover the blood, you have to have dust, you have to have dirt. So Beis Shammai says you can dig and you can cover. Don't worry about it. But digging could be a malacha on Yom Tov. It could be working on Yom Tov, and that's a big problem. Or it could be that even if it isn't, then the shovel might be muktzah, and the dust might also be muktzah. And so Beis Shammai says, go ahead, take a shovel that you put into the ground before Yom Tov, and you take the dust up and you cover up the blood. No problem. Beis Hillel says don't shecht. If you don't have the dust prepared and in a bucket in the corner or pile in the corner already beforehand, ready for you to shecht, then you shouldn't shecht at all. So it seems like Beis Hillel is being more strict and is not letting Yom Tov be a big bulldozer, Simchas Yom Tov be a big bulldozer, and Beis Shammai is letting Yom Tov be a big bulldozer. Yeah? So up until now, we discussed this first Mishnah, and we discussed a couple of other Mishnayos that seem to contradict with it. From that Mishnah, the first Mishnah, it would seem that Beis Hillel is strict and Beis Shammai is lenient. I'm pointing this out because when we're seeing an Urminhu, when we're seeing a Ramya, this flaw that we looked at, it's usually going to be a contradiction, not necessarily at the Shattika level, but as of the reasons that are underlying it. So it seems like it's talking about two different things, but really the reason that's underlying it is really underlying the context, the Mishnah is really actually is contradicting, even if it seems like it's talking about two different things. So all of these Mishnahs we're going to deal with are about Simchas Yom Tov, basically. Okay, so we're going to start here, right? And you have it actually on your paper. I'll try to give you the translation. Ela Ikasha. It's up here on the fourth line down. Yep. Ela Ikasha. If you have a difficulty, Ha Kasha. This what we're about to hear is going to be your difficulty. Rabbi Yochanan wanted to change the Mishnah. He saw two Mishnayos colliding one against the other, and he wanted to change one of the Mishnayos. If you remember, we talked last week. Rabbi Yochanan wanted to change one of the Mishnayos because they were contradicting each other. But changing a Mishnah is a big deal.
You can't change a Mishnah?
Generally, you can't change a Mishnah.
It's like changing something in the Torah. Almost, right? Or it's changeable. I don't know.
A Mishnah...
It's original and it's done. So.
Usually, yes.
Like the Constitution.
But if there's a really, really, really good, really behind it, really strong...
They can go back and change everything in a book.
Then they can change the gersa or change, because sometimes it's as if things might have been forgotten or put not in order, and so for instance, there's a klal we have chaser nechsera. Occasionally the Gemara will say that a Mishnah is lacking something, meaning there's words missing from it, and then the Gemara will go and be like art scroll and put words that are missing in between, and it makes it very clear and very well explained.
Okay.
But there's a very specific set of rules that only allow us to do that, to change a Mishnah in certain situations. And so changing a Mishnah is a last-ditch effort. A last-ditch, if you've exhausted all other options, then you change a Mishnah. And so you have to have a really strong case. And we can't change a Mishnah either. The Gemara can suggest a change in the Mishnah because they're very close to the Mishnah. There are a lot, and even among those who would suggest a change in the Mishnah, that's only basically the first generation of the Gemara. Rav Yochanan, Reish Lakish, you're not even Reish Lakish to some degree. Rav Yochanan, Rav Chia, Rav Hoshea, they can suggest Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, they can suggest a change in the Mishnah if they have a very strong case for it. But if they don't have a very strong case, they can't even do that. So we're trying to establish whether Rabbi Yochanan has such a strong case to modify the Mishnah. And I'm learning it again according to Tosafos Pshat, according to Rabbeinu Tam, who says that the Mishnah that we're changing, that Rabbi Yochanan is trying to change, is our opening Mishnah. The one that I mentioned here at the beginning that said about the shachting, Hashech Chai V'Eif, Yachper V'Decher V'Yichase Divrei Beis Shammai. That's the Mishnah he wants to change. According to Rashi, which we're not going to learn Rashi's Pshat because there's actually a question, Tosafos has a lot of questions on it. Normally we would, if I was teaching you on a normal derech, then we would learn Rashi's Pshat and then Tosafos Pshat. But Tosafos Pshat is very simple and makes it very clear and fits very well with teaching this particular klal. So today we're actually, just as a little bit of a warning, a little bit of that we're actually learning Tosafos Pshat. Just so you understand where it's coming from. Because Rashi actually says that he wants to keep the first Mishnah and he wants to change each and every one of the other Mishnayos. And when he's explaining a way to get out from that, then he's avoiding changing each and every other Mishnah. But according to Tosafos, really all of the other Mishnahs he's not trying to change, and he is just wanting to change the first Mishnah, the Beit Shenoma Mishnah. Hashechet Chai V'Eif. So Eli Ikasha, if Rabbi Yochanan has a question, Hakasha, this is where his question is going to be. Beis Shammai Eimrin Ein Neitzli Nesa'ali Liktsav Alav Baser. So there's a certain block, a certain big wooden block or big stone block that's used to cut or grind on it wheat. It's used to cut or grind on it, to smash wheat on there, or cut or wheat on this to make oatmeal or whatever, on this flat block. And this block looks a whole lot like a butcher block, but it's a little bigger. But you don't want to use it for meat. Why don't you want to use it for meat? Because if you use it for meat, then it'll mess up everything else that you use it for will be a little bit messed up. The wheat that you're going to be using is going to be messed up by using this keli for meat. So we're saying you cannot take this keli here as an ali is a certain keli that's intended for specifically for cutting wheat, and you can't use it for basar. Beis Hillel matirin. So what's the story? This guy has this thing, this big cutting block, and he has fleish, and he doesn't have anything on what to cut the fleish. This is the only keli he might have to cut this fleish. And Beis Shammai is saying.
Which page is this?
This is Yud Amud Aleph. Yud Amud Aleph.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I
So
can't see on this.
it says over there. It says 20. Or so it says Yud.
It says Yud. I only got Yud.
Yud. If it says Yud, that's Yud Amud Aleph. Anyway, so it's basically like this. You remember how I said it's for cutting and crushing wheat? Cutting and crushing wheat is usher to do on Yom Tov. So this big block here is what's called a kli shemalachta le'isr. It's a.
What about Omer?
Huh?
What about Omer?
That's a different thing.
That doesn't count.
That's
okay.
No. We're talking about normal
Crush,
days
like
crushing
to make
flour
to make
flour.
flour.
Yeah, that's usher to do on Yom Tov.
Okay.
It's not much to do on
like
Yom Tov.
malacha.
It's we have a certain rule that there's everything in malacha that's permitted for food, for making food on Yom Tov, is from lisha and beyond. Lisha is kneading the dough. So once you start to make
from flour only, from flour and up,
but
not
from flour
below.
and up. But
right.
before, but taking
Got
it to
it.
cut
Grain,
it, to
yeah,
crush it,
making
you
it,
can't
no.
do it. You can't do it.
How about pepper? Like
so
crushed pepper?
This is not a
Oh,
halacha
sorry.
class.
Got it.
I'm going
So-
over it because it's shy to the sugya.
Yeah.
But the so this keli is muktzah. Why is it muktzah? Because it's usually used for something iser. It's usually used for an iser. It's usually used for something aser, and that's grinding wheat, cutting up and grinding wheat. And because of that, so it would be muktzah. Beis Shammai says this is a muktzah dika keli. Yes, very nice. It's mutter to cut flesh, but since that you would be not wanting to, you won't want to mess this up, and you're going to end up putting it back. You might change your mind about cutting the flesh on it, so you shouldn't pick it up. The question is whether you can move it. Can you pick up this cutting block and bring it over to cut your flesh? Beis Shammai says no. Beis Shammai says you're out of luck.
But isn't there a law where you could pick up a
kli
bench?
But this is not talking. That a bench is a kli shemalachta le'heter. You sit on it. It's mutter to sit on it. We're talking about something that is actually
that's prepared the food on.
L'mashal.
For the pleasure of Yom Tov.
Yes, we're talking about a kli, a utensil that's being used only for iser. It's being only used for grinding the wheat. Yeah? So
okay.
Yeah. So just like a hammer,
but not a butcher block.
Just like
we're not talking about a butcher block, a meat block.
We're not talking about a meat block. We're talking about a grinding.
Okay. Yeah. We can't do anyway.
Yeah. That's the point. It's a kli shemalachta le'isr. It's a
it's like a muktzah on Shabbos.
It is muktzah. Just like a hammer would be muktzah.
Right.
Yes, very nice. You can crack nuts with a hammer, but that's not what the hammer is made for.
A paperweight or something.
So Beis Shammai says you can't. Pick up this keli and bring it over to cut your flesh. You can't pick this up on Yom Tov. It's muktzah.
Right.
Yeah. So he says Beis Shammai said Ein noten so all liktzavel and basar. You can't take this particular ali, this keli that's intended for grinding wheat, to cut on it basar, to cut on it flesh. Beis Hillel Matir, and Beis Hillel says, no problem. You need something to cut your flesh on for Yom Tov. It's really important, Simchas Yom Tov. Beis Shammai says, go ahead. Beis Hillel says, go ahead.
And move it
to go cut it. Yeah,
that's what I was saying. It's a Yom Tov, but the Beis Shammai is saying no, that you don't want to mix it up.
Halacha ke Beis Hillel. Anyway, so Beis Hillel Matir, Alma, so we see, Gabi Simchas Yom Tov, in a case of Simchas Yom Tov, Beis Hillel is the one who says it's a bulldozer, and it's knocking everything over. Beis Hillel is going to say this keli, which would usually be muktzah, since he needs something to cut his flesh on.
Why shouldn't he use it?
Why shouldn't he use it?
It's like he's not a rich man. I mean, he cannot afford like 5 different tables to work on.
He needs to cut the flesh.
He only got one table.
So you can have meat for Yom Tov. And Beis Hillel says, yes, you can do it, no problem.
Tuvia from the title. If I was a rich man, He only had one table. Yes, and so what's he gonna do?
Alma.
He's gonna have to move it.
So we see Gabi Simchas Yom Tov, Beis Shammai L'chumra. Beis Shammai is strict and say that it's not such a bulldozer. Beis Hillel L'kula, and Beis Hillel is lenient and says it is more of a bulldozer than not being sober. Now here's our klal right here. What do I mean here? You got this?
What does it mean?
This is a ramya. It's when it's what we talked about at the beginning of class of two things colliding one against the other. And this is telling us that we're about to collide, or about to throw this Mishnah that we just said right here we're about to throw the Mishnah about the cutting block against the Mishnah of from the beginning, the Mishnah Hashechet Chaya Va'oif, someone who's shechting, who's killing, who's slaughtering a bird yeah. So now we're going to throw the two of them against each other. And we'll see what happens, yeah?
Yep, let's see. Let's go with it.
Hashechet Va'oif Beis Shammai Yachar B'Deker Yachasa and Beis Hillel Imrim Lo Yishchak Eli Im Kain Hayalachem Afer Meichin. If you want to see the actual Mishnah as it's brought, you can flip over to the other side of the sheet I gave you. It's actually brought on the previous page and it's full, but the Gemara, the person who wrote down the Gemara over here, who put the Gemara into a solid form, figured it wouldn't be necessary to bring the entire Mishnah for 5, 6, 7 times in a row, and it was only necessary if need be to say a first couple words just to tell us which Mishnah it was. But Beis Shammai says, go ahead and shecht. Beis Hillel says, don't shecht unless you have non-mutzadik, prepared dirt to cover the blood. Amar Rabbi Yechanan. Rabbi Yechanan says, Machlefes Hashita. He says, switch one of the Mishnahs. I'm going to say Rabbi Yechanan wants to switch Hashechet Chaya Va'oif so that Beis Hillel is the one who says go ahead and shecht and dig with the and cover the blood, and Beis Shammai is the one who says don't shecht unless you have dust prepared. Now, the Gemara asks, Mimai, why? Dilma lohi, perhaps it's not so. Now the Gemara is trying to push off. We call that dechinan. We're trying to push off this strong. I mean, Rabbi Yechanan is doing a lot. He wants to do a big thing. He wants to change a Mishnah. We're trying to push off him wanting to change the Mishnah, and so we're going to give an answer to try and push it off. Dilma lohi, perhaps it's not so. Adkan, up until now, lo kam Beis Shammai hasam. In our case, at the beginning, in the beginning of the Mishnah,
With the Oli?
no. In the beginning of the Masechta, with the shechting.
Different.
Yeah. Lokam to Beis Shammai Hasam. Beis Shammai didn't say over there. Beis Shammai wasn't makel, wasn't lenient over there. Unless there was a shovel already in the dirt and already kind of loosened. Then Beis Shammai said it was okay, but usually Beis Shammai would even be more machmir than Beis Hillel. Aval, heicha deleka decher notes, but in a case where there isn't a spade stuck into the ground, he would even be more strict than Beis Hillel. Inami, alternatively, so that according to the first one, according to this first push off, the first dichui, according to the first dichui, we're going to say that Beis Hillel is usually lenient, makel, and Beis Shammai is usually strict, but this case was an exception.
He's trying to make this push off is trying to make Beis Shammai more machmir.
Even by it's trying to make Beis Shammai more machmir. Then this push off is trying to make Beis Hillel more machmir and Beis Shammai more makel. The second push-up after it says inami is looking at an exactly opposite angle.
Trying to make Beis Hillel more makel and
more machmir, and make Beis Shammai more makel. To say that, in all other cases, okay, so now we're throwing only these two Mishnayos together. So we're saying, according to the inami,
but we haven't gone to that yet.
Yeah, we're about to. Inami, ad kan, alternatively, up until now, lo ka'amri Beis Hillel hacha, Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel didn't say over here being the Mishnah about the cutting block. Ela hecha de'ika teres kli alav, except for a case where it already had the name and halachic status of already being a tool. If it's a tool in muktzah, we're much more makel by a tool, even if it's a kli shel malachta iser, even if it's a tool that's intended to be used for something that's forbidden, like a hammer. Nevertheless, since it is a tool, it's not just a piece of raw material, so we say it's less muktzah. In other words, it can be used for something mutter, theoretically. He says, lo ka'amri Beis Hillel hacha. Beis Hillel didn't say in the case of the butcher of the block, of the cutting block. Ela hecha de'ika teres kli alav, as long as it's considered a utensil in halacha. Abul Hasam, but in the case in the beginning, there wasn't any. The fact that there isn't any way to be for Beis Hillel to be makel. Over here, Beis Hillel had an excuse to be makel because it was considered a utensil already. But over there, in the first Mishnah, Hashechet Chayav Ha'of, Beis Hillel is the normal case. It's normal for Beis Hillel to be strict. According to the Inami, it's normal for Beis Hillel to be strict on Simchas Yom Tov and not think it's a bulldozer. Yeah? According to the Inami, it's normal for Beis Hillel to think it's strict, and over here is just an exception to the rule. Our cutting block is the exception to the rule.
I'm confused. So the first thing was trying to make Beis Shammai strict, right? Because that's the way usually things are.
No, we're seeing it only between this Mishnah and our first Mishnah. So you see the two Mishnayos, one against the other. Forget everything, all the other cases for a moment, forget. These two, one against the other. And Raminhu is one against the other.
We're trying to make it right so that you don't have to flip the shittim.
Yeah.
Right? So to do that, we're saying, the first thing we're trying is to say that, okay, really it's the Beis Shammai is more strict than you thought. This Mishnah which says
Hashechet Chayav Ha'of,
Beis Shammai permits you to
dig and
they're really not as permissive as you think. They're really more machmir.
They're really more machmir, and the fact that they had the fact that they had that shovel put in, but if there wasn't a shovel, they might be even more strict than Beis Hillel. And so then you can easily say the Beis Shammai is strict and Beis Hillel is lenient. Now the Inami is looking at it exactly the opposite angle.
But it has the same intention, right? It's to push off.
It's to push off flipping the shita, but does the opposite thing. In the first part where we said Beis Shammai, we're trying to see it that Beis Shammai is really the machmir.
Right.
And in the after part, we're trying to see that Beis Hillel is really the machmir.
Why would it, but how?
Because it's like this.
Wouldn't you want to show, being consistent? Wouldn't you want to show that Hillel is usually more makel?
The question is, in order to be, we're talking consistency, we're talking about only between these two Mishnayos. Since we're talking about only between these two Mishnayos, we're not talking about B'chlal, one way, across the board. We're talking, the way that the Gemara sees this perspective right now is talking about only these two Mishnayos.
So the first way of explaining things wants to make...
It's giving a reason. Here it wants to give a reason why Beis Shammai was Mekel over there, but really he's more strict.
Oh.
And here it's giving a reason why Beis Hillel was Mekel over here, and really Beis Hillel is more strict.
I see.
So he's giving a tirutz for why he was Mekel, and really he's more strict. So Beis Shammai, we said in the first case he's Mekel. Why? Because there's a Decker Notes. But if there wasn't Decker Notes, why would he be Mekel? In our case here, now we give a tirutz on Beis Hillel of why he was Mekel. Why was Beis Hillel Mekel over here? Because it's a kli. It's a utensil. Even it's a kli shemalachta le'isser. It's a utensil that's used usually for something that's asur on Yom Tov. Nevertheless, since it's a kli, we're more mekel with it. But in a case where it doesn't have where this heter doesn't exist, so Beis Hillel would also be more strict. The way that we're seeing it is we're giving a reason for why they gave a heter over there, but really they're more strict elsewhere. So you see it actually is in the opposite perspective. If it's answering on the person, it's answering why they're giving a heter, not why they made it asur. So in the case where it's before the inami, the Beis Shammai Imrim, Beis Shammai said, and that's why Beis said just Decker Notes. There's a Decker Notes, there's a spade stuck into the ground, and because the spade is stuck into the ground, and that means that it's been a little bit prepared, the offer has been the dirt has been dislodged a little bit so that it's loose and it's not really digging a hole. It's clearly there's so many problems that have been taken care of, and therefore Beis Shammai has reason to be lenient. But really Beis Shammai is strict, usually. Now over here, according to the second one, we're saying that Beis Hillel has reason to be lenient in our cutting block Mishnah, but without that reason to be lenient, Beis Hillel would also usually be strict. So like, you kind of have to compartmentalize, because you have one way of looking at it and then the opposite way of looking at it. Then when you see inami, you usually expect sometimes you're going to get an absolutely opposite paradigm of looking at it, and that's what we've got here. Is we have an opposite way of looking at it. So it's kind of like looking through two lenses in like a cross-eyed fashion. I mean, you get it and you don't get it, but it takes practice. Now, so this was our two push-off answers. We had a push-off answer on Beis Hillel and a push-off answer for Beis Shammai. Now, he's going to say, Elai kasha ha-kasha. We're going to answer again. We're going to ask another question. And by the way, at the end of this sugya, the end of the very end of this section, we actually, next week there's not going to be a class, so I'm going to kind of finish up this klal here and we'll start something new the week after. But at the end of the sugya, he actually does decide that we have to switch the one of the Mishnayos. We have to change one of them. And in the end, as Rabbeinu Tam actually explains, he's going to switch the first one. He's going to switch the Sheikh Chayv, and he's going to say that Beis Hillel is consistently lenient all the way through, and Beis Shammai is consistently strict all the way through. That's going to be in the end, according to Rabbeinu Tam, what goes on and how we're going to come out with it. But yeah. So, Elai kasha ha-kasha. But if we have a question, this is our question. Beis Shammai Omrim, this is another Mishnah. Beis Shammai Omrim ein noisen es ha'ur lifnei ha'dorsen. I remember this Mishnah. Do you remember it from the summer? Yes. You are not allowed to... you are not allowed to start... you're not allowed to put... You shecht an animal, right? Shecht the animal. Very nice, you shechted the animal. Now, if you don't work out the skin, then the skin gets dry it out and you lose it. You want to also have leather. If you don't have the leather, then it's a monetary loss shechting the animal. You might decide not to shech the animal in the first place if you were going to lose the skin of the animal. And since you're going to lose the skin, why shech the animal in the first place? And so then he won't have flesh for Yom Tov. But working out the skin, intentionally, working out the skin is a malach on Yom Tov. It's forbidden. Yeah? Even iris is forbidden on Yom Tov. It's also forbidden on Shabbos, but forbidden on Yom Tov. So how is he going? What leniency are we going to give him that we're going to allow him to work the skin in order to save it, so that he'll shecht his cow and eat the beef on Yom Tov?
Allow people to step on it.
Allow people to step on it. He's going to put it out by the front door, and where people are going to walk in and out and walk by, and whoever's walking by is going to step on it, and automatically the skin's going to get worked out. Yeah? Yeah. And so Beis Shammai says you're not allowed to do this. You are not allowed to
place the hide before people are going to trample on it.
Yeah, you can't place the hide before the people who are going to trample on it. Below yagbienu, and you can't even lift it. You can't even pick it up and move it. It's 100% muktzah, unless there's flesh on it. If there's flesh
which you're
still
going to
left
use
on
for Yom Tov cooking.
Yeah, if there's flesh that's still
on the table that I used to make flour on the day before.
No, it's already different. Well, yeah, fine, why not? But
I only got one table.
In other words, just like how if you have a table, for example, your table. You have a table, you have a Shabbos candles up on the table. Shabbos candles are muktzah. Can't move them. But if you have bread on the table and other stuff on the table, once the candles have gone out, now that the candles have gone out, if you have bread and stuff on the table, you can move the table. Why? Because there's bread on it. There's something mutter that you're going to need for Shabbos. It's on this table. You can move, and because you can move the table, and automatically also move the muktzah because there's bread on it. So this skin is muktzah, yes.
But the meat is like a bread on a table.
But the meat that's on the skin is like a bread on the table and allows you to move it. Elim Kane, you cannot move it. Yesh alav kazayas basar. There's a olive-sized piece of flesh, and Beis Hillel materium. Beis Hillel says absolutely no problem. You can do it. It's not an issue. Put it as the doormat, and people will step on it. It'll get worked out, and it's yeah. So who's being lenient? Beis Hillel is being lenient. Alma. So we see Gabi Simchas Yom Tov, Beis Shammai l'chumra, Beis Hillel l'kula. Beis Shammai is strict with it, and Beis Hillel is lenient. I'm quickly gonna start to finish it and wind this down because it's getting a little late.
Oh no!
Beis Shammai l'chumra, Beis Hillel l'kula. We're gonna slap on our minhu, our
Bam!
Large Halacha Collider, right? LHC, Large Halacha Collider. Get it? Okay. We're colliding two Mishnahs against each other. Minhu, Hashechet Chayav Ha'if, someone who shechts a Chayav Ha'if, the Yom Tov, the whole Mishnah that we've been talking about this entire time. Amar Rabbi Yechanan. So Rabbi Yechanan says switch the Shita. Which one he switches the Shita? He switches, according to Rabbeinu Tam, Sheikhet Chayav Ha'if, he switches. Hold on. Now we're going to give our push-off answer.
Go buy your own bagel.
We're going to have a push-off answer. Dilmamai, and why are we going to switch the Shita? Dilmalohi, perhaps it's not so. Ad Khan, up until now, Lo Ka'amri Beis Shammai Hasan, Ela Heichadika Decker notes we're giving the same answer for Beis Shammai over here as we gave in the past. Beis Shammai was lenient over there because there was a Decker notes, but usually Beis Shammai is strict. And then we're going to give a different dichui on Beis Hillel, because we have to give a different dichui on Beis Hillel every single time. Al kam lo kamer Beis Hillel hacha. Beis Hillel didn't say over here, Ella dechazi lemizga alui. About a situation where you're able to sit on it. You can flip this skin upside down with the fur side up, the hair side up, and you can sit on it. Nice, yeah. So you can, since you can sit on it, it can be used on Yom Tov. Since you can be used on Yom Tov, so very nice. You can move it. Aval Hasam, but in the case over there in our first Mishnah, lo. So we're gonna finish up here. Next week, Bezras Hashem. Next week, Mitzvah Hashem will be in Yerushalayim learning Torah. But next week, if not, B'lav Hachi will be here having our Malacha Malka Fibringen next week.
Oh yeah, the big one, the major
one.
one.
Major one, the once a year one.
Mega Malka.
Yeah.
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 That's what it is.
Once a year one, and the following week, Bezras Hashem will probably resume this year, and I will have to speak to the Hanhala about, as Shabbos is getting later, when I'm going to be able to do this, when they want me to do this, whether it should be continuing to be after Shabbos or perhaps doing it a little bit during the week, doing like a class sometime during the week. As Shabbos gets very late, it's not going to be shaykh to do right after Shabbos a shir. So please bear with me on that. I have to figure that out with the Hanhala. So thanks so much for guys for coming, and
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much.